Welcome back to the 99, where we are focused on brewing a better competitive commander. I'm your host, Patrick Marlette, and a very warm regards to you all for joining me on this, our 10K AMA. A toast to you all for helping to make this happen. Cheers. The king of beers. Not a sponsor. They never are. We need to change that. The gang, I gathered up a series of questions from our most devout fans, our Discordians, and our Patreon members to form this very AMA. However, if I happen to miss your question and or you are just a YouTube subscriber, feel free to ask me anything in the comment section down below. I'm usually very good about responding to all the comments, and I'll try to do so in this video just as well. And also, if you have questions for the crew, feel free to ask any non-specific questions for me to them, and I'll be sure to send those questions their way. I hope that wasn't too confusing when I worded that. So there's a few things I want to go over before we jump into this video, and that is just to personally thank all of you. I have been doing this channel for a little over a year now, something like that, maybe even longer. It's really gone a strong show of support since recently over these last few months, and I don't know where that's coming from. I don't generally suggest you like, share, subscribe, all that dumb shit, because I figure if you enjoy the content, you'll do that for yourself and for me, and I appreciate that. And it's really showed these last few months. This channel has just boomed in these past few weeks especially, and I really appreciate all of that show of support. You guys are the best. This channel means a whole lot to me, and I'm hoping to expand it and grow upon it even more. So thank you so much for helping us reach this milestone. I'm extremely excited to reach that next one. Now, you might be noticing that I'm wearing a very particular garment today. I've been asked for months now if there was a swag collection for the 99, something that you could wear to represent your love of the show, and I thought to do one better. I know there are multiple mages out there watching this channel, and whether you are a mono-colored mage or a multicolored mage, well, guess what? I tried to design something just for you. I figured with 10,000 strong, this would be a great time to put out this swag collection, finally. Each garment represents your love of the mono or multicolored commander identity, with the backs of each garment rocking the 99 logo, letting the world know your appreciation for this channel. And honestly, that's the best part, because I know a lot of you have wanted to help the channel and wanted to rep swag. With a fair portion of these proceeds going to do so, you're helping the production cost here a lot. So thank you to anyone who decides to buy any of these garments. And also, if you want to help support the channel directly, the best way to do so, and has always been the best way, is via Patreon. You can donate as little as $1 to $5 a month, with benefits listed in the link in the description down below. But I play pickup games with our Brew Baby and Brew crew members, and do shout outs at the end of these videos, and of course have an end roll at the end of these videos, same with this video today, with a topic of the month discussed with our Brew crew members at the very end of this video as well. And that particular topic is going to be what got you into Commander and what was your first deck. And I wanted to take this month to relax and reminisce on something fun, because this has been a really hectic year for a lot of us, myself included. So I hope in talking about our first decks, we might get a kick in discussing them down below, but also exploring what ideas we had going into them. And I'm excited to share our Brew Crew members' thoughts on this at the end of the video. And actually, one of our Q&A questions is in regards to this monthly topic. I generally like to do a video on these topics, but I don't think my first deck deserves its own video. And with that, I'm gonna go ahead and read these off in no particular order, but I did try to make it every other. So Patreon, Discord, so on and so forth. And our first question is from Patreon member Adam Smithson. How long does an average episode take to script, film, edit, then release? And Adam, grab a drink, by the way, because you're gonna be in it for a minute. The longest to edit is Brew Wars. The longest to script is something like overrated MTG cards or brewing basics videos. You know, those are all determined beforehand. I put my thoughts down on paper, and the ones that take the longest to shoot are generally the ones where we're spitballing. So any talking segments with myself and the gang, those generally take the longest to shoot outside of Brew Wars. Brew Wars obviously takes the longest. The old shooting method, the current shooting method. It all is very time consuming. And of course, I'm trying to find ways to make that process quicker, just for myself, my own sake. But I'm also trying to improve on how these programs appear for you. I'm always trying to upgrade the standard of these. And in doing so, it's a learning process for me because it's a one-person operation. If you've ever wondered, I do the scripting and the editing and the filming and the lighting and the sound and all that stuff. So if you ever wonder why I can't do more Brew Wars in a month, it's that. I just wouldn't have the time. But Brew Wars, let's just start there because I think that's probably the most favorite segment on this show. It's actually a toss-up between that and the deck text, which is a different story. Brew Wars, the last one I shot, it was me editing for 3 days. The shoot itself, Justin is a nurse in the area, and he had a limitation on when he could shoot. So I was able to shoot for roughly 2 hours and 30 minutes. Right, so we captured all of that footage to include the confessionals and the gameplay. If you haven't seen the recent Brew Wars, go ahead and check it out. That was 2 hours and 30 minutes. And then the editing of that, maybe like 4 to 6 hours between 3 days. So let's just say an average of 5, that's 15 hours. 17.5. Is that fair? It's something like that. It took a while, and I try to comb through these videos multiple times. So a lot of my time is really just sitting down and making sure everything transitions well, at least with Brew Wars. And then obviously with the new confessionals, I add those in last. Like I'll know where I want to slide it in, and then of course, I'll try to find B-rollers footage to, match that if it's a board shot. I would say that's roughly 15 hours. Let's just say that was roughly 15 hours. Like it's a lot of editing because I have to comb through a lot of footage. And unfortunately, because the time constraints, I actually wound up doing something that I was not professional in the recording process with how I timed things with my gear. That's all besides the point. That also added time to that shoot. So I don't think that every Brew Wars takes about 15 hours. But something like Hidden Gems, like the last Hidden Gems I put together, that requires research on my part for the cards. Things that, because I play a lot of cards that don't fit into every list, and then I do play a lot of cards that are maybe offbeat that would fit into every list, and it's determining which cards those are, and obviously fitting that, because the segment is produced this way, fitting that into a certain color or typing is important. So, that is time consuming, but maybe at most like 2 hours trying to figure out which cards to discuss. And there's no really script there. Really, the only things that are scripted are some of the solo shoots that I do. Everything is just like this, ad-libbed. And once I have that list pre-established, I've thought about the cards in depth prior, so I don't really need to script that. I'm usually very good to speak off the cuff on what those cards are and how they're beneficial for you. I'm not trying to sell you on these cards, so that doesn't really matter to me. But whether or not these cards are beneficial to you, I try to convey that and hopefully do so. Editing those is usually, so the filming is probably like 45 minutes to an hour for that, or less. It really depends on the video. And then the editing for that is going to be in the realm of like 3 to 6 hours, depending on how long the shoot was and how complicated the edit is. So what is that? That's like 2 hours, 3 hours. That's like a day's work, right? That's like a day's work for Hidden Gems. But when it comes to deck text, those are easily the longest among all the segments I've talked about, because I don't ever produce, not anymore at least, deck text. I don't produce deck text of any popular commanders. I would say like the first deck tech I did, Zavala, was pre-established. But the other thing is, I don't follow or look at other deck techs or other brewers' lists to formulate one. So everything's done from scratch, because I try to provide you all with something original. And with that comes a lot of trial and error. So like that last Rograk and Timina list I did, I mean, that's obviously new. Rograk just came out. So that took a very good while to produce. Just, getting the deck up to snuff, like where I found it acceptable. And then sometimes I'll make lists. There's a lot of lists you all don't see that don't make the cut, that aren't good enough. And I've just wasted, hours devising a strategy that is inconsistent. But Rogreg and Tymna, very consistent. I really love that list. And I actually, to treat myself, purchased that whole list in paper, which is not something I was planning to do, but I enjoy it so much. Like, it's such an interesting strategy. I've always loved Sire of Insanity. I've never pushed for a plan that utilizes just Sire of Insanity. I'm taking a very long time on this question. However, those are the longest, easily the longest, because it's literal weeks of me testing. And, you know, that might mean I missed the initial wave of, you know, people giving a shit about Rogreg or whatever the newest legendary is. And that's okay, because if it means I get to produce a list and give it to you that I thoroughly believe is of caliber, then I'm satisfied. You know, it's tricky. Of course, I would like to put those lists out with immediacy, but, you know, I'm juggling multiple projects. I don't have anyone scripting or coming up with ideas for me. I usually come up with all the content ideas, so it's tough. It's a full-time job. It is now. Between this and then obviously the stuff I do for Channel Fireball, it's a full-time job. And the videos that are coming out for Channel Fireball this month are going to be absurd. I hope that answered your question. I guess on the high end, a video could take 15 hours. That's probably the ballpark for these deck techs as well. 6 to 8 hours, right? On the low end. There you go. Now, from Discordian Eris Omegas and Patreon member Harry Seward, what will it take to make you want to play Blue Pat? And in Harry's words, I'm sure we can agree that blue is the color that makes Commander competitive. Do you not like the feeling of real power? Sometimes when I do these talking segments and you all like applaud me on how I didn't stop for like 45 minutes, I get so dry in the throat. So I will take seconds to drink beer in this particular episode. I'm really just trying to avoid this question. Blue, why don't I play blue? So I don't think I've openly said this on the channel. Maybe I have, but I don't brew for blue. You've likely noticed that. Like, none of my deck techs have been blue unless I was sharing a deck tech of a fellow brew crew member. And I don't mean my Patreon members, although that could be a thing. I don't brew for blue because much of the deck is predetermined at that point. And it's also in silent protest of the fact that I don't feel blue should be the only color with counter magic. Yes, other colors have counter magic, but those are all flukes. Like, those things aren't repeatable. You don't see that in sets. I think white should actually get counter magic, and it fits well with what white does, especially the tax counter spells. I think that would make a lot of sense. But so in silent protest of the fact that blue is the only color that gets the best form of interaction, and it is the best form of interaction. And they get a little too carried away with that shit too, because they don't run, most blue decks I see don't run hard removal because there's not much of it, unless they're in a multicolored list, and they still don't run hard removal, and they run bounce in place of that. Just get over yourself. Blue's not that good. Blue is very good though. It's the color of competitive, maybe. I don't know what would make me want to brew for a blue list precisely. I have no interest in constructing for the color, again, one, because a lot of it's predetermined. Like, I know I'm going to use X amount of counter spells, X amount of card quality cantrips. There's just certain staples in blue that fit into every list because they're very good. And that's very boring to me. So I would like to have most of the 99 up for, debate or like question, because it's of more interest to me to brew for lists that aren't predetermined, right? So blue, not my favorite color for brewing. Maybe if the legendary said you can't have the word counter in spells in your deck list, then maybe that would, make it narrow enough to where I would have a little bit more fun brewing it. And I know that sounds crazy, okay? Y'all appreciate your Forces of Wills and your Fierce Guardianships and your Doodads and whatever, but it's just not of interest to me. And plus, generally speaking, I feel like I'm usually the only non-blue player at the table. It's usually the case. Or, two versus two other blue players. It's so prevalent that I think that we get enough blue at the table. It's not necessary. However, in a limited environment, drafting, playing sealed, playing cube, when we play cube at Justin's, I play blue all the time. I love it. I do like playing it, but brewing for it is just very boring for me. It's just very boring for me. Man, maybe I would do something with like a lands matter strategy, or they have so many cool effects and so many potential combo pieces that just get undervalued because of cards like Laboratory Maniac, Jace, Wielder of Mysteries, and now Thassa's Oracle, right? That's usually the general win con because those are easier. And it's very boring to me. So I'm probably not going to play a blue deck unless someone handed me one. If we, after this pandemic's out, and you see me at some sort of commander event, you know, if you handed me a blue deck, I would play it. I wouldn't be that opposed. Patreon member KevTag asks, I was wondering how you all met, whether you've been friends for years or if you all met recently. So I did not think about these questions beforehand, as you can tell with my waffling. So with Justin, we've been friends for years. Alex and Ernesto, we actually met. Justin was looking for, when we got into EDH and we wanted to start playing more competitively, Justin found those two guys on a Facebook forum, if I'm not mistaken, and then we wound up just going to some random person's house in, I think we went to Alex's place initially, or he went to Justin's place, something like that. But yeah, they were complete strangers when we first met them. There was no, you know, background relationship there. And, you know, John, Mikey, Rebel, Phil, I don't remember. Likely forums, or they're friends of friends, or did I meet them at an event? I have the worst memory in the world, mind you. I have such a horrible memory. I know I met Phil through Rebel. I feel like I met Rebel randomly. You can correct me. But I feel so bad. I don't remember where I met these guys. It was literally just through chance and or through friends of friends. And at that point, you know, Alex Ernesto, they were always expanding the play group with more people. So, you know, there were other people locally that we played with. Some people moved, so on and so forth. But the gamer group, the regular group, are some of the people you see on the Brew Wars episodes. Justin and I met years ago when I was picking up photography, and I was using photography to partially make a living. And I got into real estate photography. I was trying to build a portfolio because I had a real estate friend who would help me out. Long story short, I wound up, Justin's apartment was just sold to him, and it was just like done up. And one of my friend's friend, who's a realtor that sold Justin on the apartment, asked if I could go there to shoot the space, just to get, you know, pics for their site and obviously for my own portfolio. And I got there and it was just a horrible, stormy day. I had nothing to shoot the space without natural lighting because I was the professional, and it was just not a great day for photos. However, not for me, I came so underprepared. But however, I met Justin. We hung out for the rest of the day practically. Wound up just eating dinner at his place. And mind you, he was a stranger at this point, outside of our, you know, one connection, which was the realtor friend. And yeah, we just hung out. Ate together. We talked about Magic, lo and behold. And then I don't think we got into Magic until like a couple years later. As a matter of fact, we wound up playing a lot of board and card games prior. But yeah, that's how I met Justin, at least. That one's pretty sharp in the mind. So from Discordian Krovax the Clone, what is the red liquid in the dragon that's behind you? This dragon? This dragon? That's Diamond XO Brandy, right? So that's a 750 milliliter bottle. It doesn't look it, but it is. And I purchased that, one, on a whim, partially because I was drunk, but two, because I wanted to use it in the Brew Wars segment. Now, if you go back to our previous Brew Wars, our earliest Brew Wars, you'll notice there was a drinking game involved. And at the end of the episode, nothing in particular would happen. The drinking games were suggested by audience members, and we would compile a list of the drinking games and add them to a hat and pull the drinking games out of the hat. It didn't work for me. So I wound up developing my own drinking game for Brew Wars. It's not, I'm not instating it yet, and I'm not sure I will. We'll see. But it's a companion game for MTG, and not just for Commander, although there are specific Commander drinking game cards in there. One day I'll share this with you all. Maybe that will be a fun project for everyone to play and have a drinking game while they play Magic. But essentially this was going to be used in said game. And also at the end of the Brew Wars episode, I was hoping that we can have that player take a drink from the dragon as a gimmick. I spent way too much on this dragon, and we're not using it at all. One, because of the pandemic, I don't think we should be breaking bread that way. But two, it just doesn't really fit into the programming well. I think it's enough that we're all just enjoying brews as we play anyways. But yeah, it's Brandy. It's Brandy. From Patreon member Running Red J2. Is Voltron doomed to hardly be a thing in higher levels of EDH besides Godo? And is Godo really Voltron? Is it considered Voltron if you just equip one item? Maybe. But in my mind, Voltron is like 2 or more objects equipped to your creature, and I should say permanents. So they could be auras, and obviously they can be artifact equipment. Is it doomed to being inferior in cEDH or optimize EDH? No, I don't think so. It really depends on your pod. I mean, and you might be looking at it wrong too, because if you were to play a Voltron list, let's start here. Yeah, when you sit down to play a game of Magic, you are either enabling or disabling your opponents with your choices and the cards you put in your deck. You are either enabling or disabling them. Now, if you play at a pod that's not very mixed and it's all a bunch of proactive lists, you're likely enabling each other, right? You are feeding opponent's Dockside Extortionist. You are enabling people to go off because you're not running enough interaction. You're not running enough removal. You're not running enough stacks, right? So when you look at a Voltron list, you need to consider, when can I accomplish the goal of this list? And obviously that would be beating down opponents with a very big beater, either your commander or any sort of relevant creatures in your list. So if I'm looking at a Voltron list, when is this reasonably going to win? And it's mid to late game, right? It is past turn 3, which is what everyone thinks cEDH is. It's not. There's a mix. You know, there's a little gray area in between control magic, reactive list, and proactive list to where stacks function. And there are shades of each of those 3 typings in every single deck you'll see. But Voltron is really, in my mind, just another variation of stacks. Like if you're playing a stacks list, if you're playing a Voltron list, you should probably be running stacks, because you're likely not going to be able to kill everyone instantaneously or that quickly. So you should be running a good diversity of stacks and a good diversity of interaction. And if you are, I think that Voltron list has a fair chance of winning. And Boros is certainly heading in that direction with a lot of the legendaries we're seeing. We're seeing a lot more card draw in a functional way that benefits a Voltron list, like with Akiri and Wylith. Giving them equipment, giving them auras, gets you draw. Like that's awesome. And we need more of that. And I haven't seen enough of them in the wild to say that they're dead. It's just underplayed. And if it is played, it might not be played correctly. Hate to break it to you. But yeah, Voltron's not inferior by any means. I don't think there's a strategy that's necessarily inferior. You know, sometimes a list is just going to pop off on turn 1 and you either do or do not have the answers. You know, but you can't always mulligan to a Force of Will hand just to stop this one list because you know it can go off on turn 1. You need to play for yourself, but pack in enough of the right cards to make sure that you're not just completely giving the game to your opponents. Okay? It doesn't matter what type of list you're running. I don't care how proactive you think your list is, how quickly it can win the game. Pack enough interaction. And that goes for Voltron list too. From Discordian Hitzel, give us the deep and interesting lore about your wristwatch channel. So if you don't know, this is the second channel I've had break 10K, and that's awesome. But on top of that, this is my 4th channel on YouTube. So the first channel I put out was The Regulars, and it was a board and card game show. And I would love to go back to that because that was so much fun. Having different companies send out games to get reviewed, and I had a particular style for doing the reviews. The channel was taken down. I didn't quite like the quality of the content. It just didn't suit me. Maybe that's narcissistic or something. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like that I have a quality standard I try to uphold, and it just didn't meet it. But I really did enjoy doing that. The next channel I put out was sort of a way for me to learn how to do all of this. And that was Clock, Stock, and Barrel, which allowed me to explore the hobby of watch collecting. And obviously I dug it way too deep into that. And the channel that Hitzel is likely referring to is the 99 is Take Time with Patrick Marlette. Due to awful reasons, I had that YouTube channel taken from me. And I won't get into why. It's old history now. But Clock, Stock, and Barrel was ultimately removed from my control, and YouTube was unable of helping me recover it. And I'm really dredging up some horrible shit. However, based off of that failing, I decided to go and start a new watch channel because it was something I still enjoyed, and I had a large audience there, and I wanted to grow on that audience still and still develop my skills at shooting interviews, shooting product, and obviously shooting subjects in general. But also because I enjoyed the hobby. So if you don't know, as of the beginning of this month, I've put that show on hiatus so I can focus on the 99 because this is something I'm clearly more passionate about. Maybe it's not evident, but I really enjoy board and card games. And watches are something I just silently enjoy. You know, I don't generally go out and do drinks, or especially now, but I don't usually do like watch hangouts like I used to. I don't really go to schmancy cocktail events and sit down and like look at a watch. It's crazy some of the events I've been to where you'd go to a room and you'd see a table full of like vintage and modern offerings, and that table has the, you know, the sum worth of like $500,000 on it in watches. Some of these events I went to were crazy. The amount of money thrown about and on wrist. And, you know, I never spent more than, it sounds like it is a lot, but relative to, you know, the rest of the watch market, it's not. I've never spent more than $3K on a watch. And that's my Grand Seiko. I have a watch box that used to sit on this shelf that you might remember. It's now below because the dragon took, you know, president. But I have a watch box with my collection of watches. I've been reducing my collection because it's not necessary. I love collecting things. I always have, and that's why I collect watches. I hope this is answering your question, Hitzel. But predominantly, it was a proving ground for me. Like all of those channels leading up to this, it was a way for me to develop my skill to where I felt like I was putting forth quality that I would want to see in programming, that I felt comfortable providing you all. So it was just a good opportunity for me to learn. And that's what I did between jobs for the last 3 years. I could have stopped starting new channels, really. And I don't intend to after this. But that show's on hiatus. I'm probably going to pick it back up soon, though. I have a lot of friends in the watch industry that still obviously actively want to work with me on new releases. And it's just not very profitable, unfortunately, for content creators unless you have, you know, some amazing relationship with these brands. It's difficult to stay aloft doing that, and New York is very expensive. So that's why that's on hiatus. That's why I don't do that anymore, really. All right, so moving on. Patreon member Trent, if you watch anime, what are each person's top 3 waifus? Reasons why, optional. So dictionary.com describes waifu as a term for a fictional character, usually in anime or related media, that someone has great and sometimes romantic affection for. I feel like this is a setup, Trent. Because, you know, most of the shows I've been watching these days, most anime in general, really, deals in a high school setting with characters that are definitely jailbait. So it's tricky. It's tricky to say what my favorite waifus are. So I for a manga that I really enjoy and the first season of a TV series, and I highly suggest you move to the manga if you haven't, One Punch Man. I think One Punch Man's fantastic. Tatsumaki, Fubuki, the best. Fubuki, really good comedy with her and Saitama. Tatsumaki, just a badass. And if I were to pick a third waifu, this is maybe a little bit of a stretch. I don't know if it needs to be, I mean, it says related, right? Related media? Yeah, related media. Wild Arms, PS1, Cecilia. Does that count? I'm really just trying to plug a fantastic PlayStation 1 classic that you should all play, but Wild Arms, play that game. You're going to see a pixelated girl in there. She's awesome. The character stories in that game are awesome. That whole game is awesome. I love vintage RPGs. I say vintage. I grew up with that shit. All the Wild Arms are fantastic, but Wild Arms 1, classic. Hope this is answering most all your questions. Next up, we have a question from Discordian Wedge. Do you have any plans to collab with any other content creators, people in the optimized EDH community? If not, who would you love to do one with? Short answer is no. I don't have any plans to do any collaborations in the near future. One, because I'm technologically impaired. I'm not very good at doing screen captures with my editing rig for both audio and video, and that is a fault on me. But I also don't like how those videos look. So up until this pandemic's over, I don't imagine doing any sort of collaborative videos. And also, on your note here, I don't really care if that channel be optimized, casual or competitive, or whatever you want to call it. Any EDH channel that I would potentially work with in the future, all I care is that the individuals that run that channel are putting forth a good message about the game, are good individuals, and have the same quality standards that I have. I care that they share attention to detail that I try to provide to this channel. So that whatever we put forth, I'm satisfied with. So I don't really like working with other people in general. It's tricky. I've got so many trust issues, but I think of the shows that I do commonly watch, and I don't very often watch Commander-based content or MTG-based content, to be honest with you guys. If I do, it's something like the professor's is it worth it to buy a box video? And not because I need that information. The same thing I advocate for myself, I will advocate for you. Buy singles. Buy singles. Don't rip open booster boxes expecting to get you what you want, exactly what you want. Just buy singles from sets and you'll save yourself a lot of heartache and a lot of money. But I'll have that on in the background when I'm doing errands, and that's when I have time to watch content. And the other show I like is Command Zone. Like I'll have the game night episodes on when I'm doing errands around the house or in the neighborhood. That to me is my downtime, right? To consume content. And those are two creators who I think care about what they do. I think the professor really cares about his content. He's not just in it for the shock awe. He's actually trying to give you solid information on the game. And same thing with Command Zone. I really like what they do, and they clearly care about their production quality, and they have upheld really good standards, and they've obviously bettered themselves over the years as well. I like what they do a lot. I think I would probably want to do something with them, and I think that cross-pollination would be good. So I'd like to break the stigma that cEDH has around it, that we're all just dirty scoundrels trying to, pub stomp children in fucking local game stores. That's really not the case. And also the fact that, we're just not interested in having fun, because I think, we've bashed that concept here. I think you all know we're interested in having fun, at least on the 99. So I hope that answers your question. Next up, from Patreon member Luke, do you remember the first EDH deck you ever built? How awful was it? You assume it was awful. And do you still have it built? It was awful. I'm not gonna lie to you. My first ever EDH deck was technically Wart the Raid Mother. That was awful. I do have it built. After that was Perforos, but the list I do remember most was Liliana Heretical Healer, and she was what I wanted to be my mass discard list, right? It's a list I took a lot of time developing and working on and trying to make viable, and it just didn't get there. Ultimately, she became Tiny Bones after I put the idea down a long time ago. But Liliana Heretical Healer, if you don't know, it's the creature that flips over into a planeswalker, and she has the ability to make people discard cards. That's part of the core concept of the list. But on top of that, when a creature dies, that's how she flips. You get to create a 2/2 zombie. So the cool part about this particular list was that I had a Razaketh Reanimator loop built in, utilizing Gravecrawler. So if you had a Liliana flips, a zombie on the field, and you had Razaketh, right? You likely reanimated Razaketh from doing, I don't know, one of your discards, right? So you would need the zombie still, so you'd need another creature to sacrifice, or you just had it in your hand, but you want to get Gravecrawler, you put Gravecrawler down. And Gravecrawler says if you control a zombie, you can cast Gravecrawler from your graveyard. So the whole concept here now is to cast Gravecrawler, sacrifice it to Razaketh, and then utilize those tutors to gain all the manas. So you'd use Razaketh to get Dark Ritual, Cabal Ritual, all the rituals you can, and then amass a good deal of mana. If you don't have enough mana from doing that, you'll go ahead and grab Felden's Cane from your list, which we used Felden's Cane. If you don't know what that is, it taps it's 1 CMC, taps itself, exiles itself. You can shuffle your graveyard into your library. Then you grab all the cards you needed again, all the rituals, to go ahead and get enough mana to be able to cast Phyrexian Altar, Gravecrawler enough times to build up that Gravestorm count, and you would win the game with Bitter Ordeal. Wow, okay. Quite the long explanation, but yes, that was the first ever, I think, attempt at a optimized EDH list. And was it good? No. No. A card draw in the command zone, really can't talk about that enough. It's sort of what makes the world go round. It's sort of one of the most important things in the game. So yeah. And lastly, from Patreon member Ali Borelli, anything else coming up in the works? Love your content. I do too. Anything else coming up in the works? Well, this year, the only things I really have planned are a nice end of the year video encapsulating the best cards for Commander from this year. There's gonna be a Brew Wars episode, and I haven't thought completely on what I want to do for the 4th episode this month. There is an idea, and it's something I haven't done on the show before. So why don't I start there? I would like to do live streams, and I would like them to be a regular thing. It could be like the second Sunday of every month. But I do a lot of brewing on the side, and it would be great to entertain you all and also get ideas from you whilst doing so. So I would love to live stream. Conceptually I called it the cold brew, but do a cold brew with you all where we talk about deck building and I work on a particular deck. The deck I want to work on is Belbe, the Golgari girl from Commander Legends. There weren't a lot of interesting legends, but she's an interesting one, and I haven't really seen an awesome take on her yet. But that's something I would love to do, and maybe something we can work on together. Partially why I don't do the live streams is the internet's kind of shoddy here, but I've done enough streamed videos with other channels that have come out good, so maybe it'll work. We'll see. That's something I want to do. I'm also interested in producing. There's this joke going around about how content creation in the world of MTG is sort of devolved into two things. Reactionary videos about folks gawking at how awful MTG is now, or they released a product that's horrific, or those shock awe videos, and then the self-help kind of stuff that I generally tend to do. And it's funny and true, like every joke has a little bit of truth to it, but I don't like that that's all we generally get. And the self-help videos are great, but I'd like to do maybe some episodic videos that centered around the world of MTG, and whether that series be a year-long thing and or be condensed into 4 videos and like sort of miniature story arcs. It'd be great. I'm no script writer, but I would try my darndest. I did go to school, and you all don't know this, for acting. So it would be great to dust off those acting chops and provide something that's entertaining and engaging in a different way, and maybe even not centered around magic. That's the other thing, because there's only so many concepts within this game that I would find entertaining. So I just want to make sure that it's true to what I want to do, and engaging and fun, but also enjoyable for you. And maybe you all can comment on that, whether you would enjoy something like that. Short episodics, and I have some acting friends that I can probably bring out to create said content. Again, that's in the very back of my mind. That's something I would love to do. Another thing that's a little bit further forward is something I've been talking about for years with Alex, is music for Magic. Music for Magic. And accompanied with that would be parody videos, but that's very hard to accomplish now. However, I would love to do full-scale songs that people can just sit down and listen to as they play Magic the Gathering. It'd be very fun. Whether that be parodies and or just original music that was within the realm of fantasy rock, or something that they can listen to casually while they play games of Magic. That would be very fun, and maybe separate from the channel, but that is something I would love to produce for the show. So there's a lot on my mind and on my palette for what I would like. So far as what's accomplishable, anything is possible. It really depends on what you all want to see. Really, that's going to be my guiding star for all of this. So let me know what you all would like from me, from this channel. What do you feel like you're not getting in the MTG community at large? It doesn't have to be cEDH only, but what would you like to see from a Magic channel that you would enjoy? You know, I really loved watching, God, what was it called? It was called Tabletop. There's a episodic I used to watch on YouTube that was so good. I can't remember the name of it, but it was fantastically produced. And they would just play board games together, and they would demonstrate board games that you likely haven't heard of. And of course, it was great promotion for that, board game creator, but it was also just a great way to showcase something that you haven't played before. So maybe even some content for board and card games outside of the world of Magic, outside of our regularly scheduled episodes based on Commander, right? That would be great. I'm rambling. This whole video I've been rambling. I hope that this answered some of your questions though, and I hope it gets you perked for 2021. This has been a really fun video to do. I didn't think of any of these questions prior, and that's why I'm rambling so much. Forgive me if I rambled too much, but I hope you enjoyed this episode. And guys, if you want to help support me create the product you see here, produce all of these episodes I'm talking about, well, the best way to do so is either with buying swag at this point and or via Patreon. And as our Patreon members know, there is a special shout out at the end of each one of these videos. And today's extra special, extra random shout out goes to June. June, thank you for being a brew baby. You are among the best. And for their thoughts on the monthly topic, I'll be turning to Brew Crew member Ellis Meredith. I started playing Commander because I wanted to play a format that had access to older cards. I hated how limiting and repetitive Standard and Modern were, and Singleton made it more challenging to deck build. My first deck was an Oloro deck whose sole purpose was to pillow fort and gain life and then outlast everyone else, and then hopefully win against the last person left. Not a great deck. My best deck currently I call Turtles in Time because it's Yuriko Ninjas with all the extra turn spells. Progress. Again, to my Patreon members, my Discordians, and to you fellow YouTubers here, you guys are the best. Thank you for making this such an awesome year for me. I really mean that. This has been such a fun year to just do content creation, and this channel has been such a joy. So thank you for helping this one grow. I'm so excited for the future of this channel, and I hope all of you will be there with me when we reach 100K. Again, my name is Patrick Marlett, and happy brewing, babies.